Hello everyone and welcome to my video. This was a painting that I started at the 2013 Painters of Painters event in Campbell River, and this was my demonstration painting. I thought it would be fun to do a video to show people that were at the event how the painting wound up in the process of getting it to a finished state. So you see this is a standard 20 by 30 pre-primed canvas that I've actually gone over with a thick body gesso and a palette knife to create some texture, and then washed over with a reddish brown ground, which I find works well for underlying color for skin tones, because I do a lot of figurative painting. So I tend to keep the painting loose around the outer edges, and I like to start with the darks in the background around the outer edges to give me a wet edge to blend into, because I want to have some of those background edges quite nice and soft. This is me wondering whether it's going well or not. It usually happens partway through the painting. You start to wonder if you're going in the right direction. So anyway, back onto it. This is still the first day, and I'm starting now. I've got the background darks in and some of the skin tone. I'm starting to put the lighter colors in to establish my higher value range. I find when you have a mid-range color like the red in the background, then you can set the darks by being darker than the middle value, and then set the lights by being lighter than the middle value. So I like to start with some color down on the canvas, and the painting is kind of half done. The middle value is already established. And working away again on the right hand figure, I at this point I'm really filling in. I'm trying to mix the colors and the values that I need as close as possible and block them in. With the water-soluble oil, we have about 3 days working time, and so once the painting is blocked in, you can start to finesse the detail. You don't want to block it in too roughly though, because you lose all that underlying drawings. So quite often I'll paint around things just so that I know where they are. I've already established them in the drawing stage, and I don't want to lose them. So I've got the back of the figure on the right hand side um, pretty much filled in now. I'll start to work on the background figure, just putting in reflected color and trying to keep that background figure a little darker to offset and contrast the figure in the foreground, push that figure forward. I'm using a fairly large brush, about a ½ inch Winsor Newton Galleria brush, which is a nice soft brush, and that's what I'm using to block in the areas. Oh, I moved the camera a little bit left here for the second day so I don't take pictures of my head. Again, blocking in areas. The paint that I put on yesterday is still workable and wet, so I can block those areas in and then come back and soften off the edges. Sticking with the largest brush as possible, just so that you don't get carried away with the detail. If you start putting in too much detail in the early part of the painting, it's very difficult to loosen up again. So progressively, I find it's nice to progressively get tighter and tighter with the detail, but keep the non-focal areas loose. I like to have multiple secondary focal points. I like a good strong primary focal point, but also little areas of interest that are designed to keep people interested and their eye moving through the painting. Now you can see I've pretty much got all the red base ground covered over. Now I'm starting to come in with various different types of brushes. Some are softer, some are harder, depending on how wet the paint is, and blend those transitional areas together. Blend the blocked-in colors together, and then soften them off with a large soft brush. And I think I'm there starting to tone down some of the intensity of the red. I find that it's hard to get intensity back. So I start with the color a little bit brighter than I want, and then blend dark into it. But you can go darker, but it's hard to bring intensity back once you've lost it. So I find it's best to start a bit brighter. Here I'm blending the transitional areas between the greenish and reddish tones, which is interesting because it's a discord. It's complementary colors. So blending the two together um, is a little bit tricky without turning it into mud. And working away on some of the details and the secondary focal points, like the hair and the background figure. Um, Putting in highlights and then blending them away, and then putting them back in and blending them away. I find that if you repeat that over and over again, you build up layers of softness and hardness, soft and hard edges, and layers of soft detail that are very subtle. So I'll put in a lot of detail, and then I'll blend it all out to a certain point, then put in more detail and blend it out, and I find that creates some nice interest. I'm using styrofoam butcher trays as my blending palettes. I don't mix the paint right on my sampling palette, the glass sheet. I tend to use disposable trays, and then I can put the tray aside when it gets full, and if I need to go back and recover some of that color I've used in the previous part of the painting, I have the foam tray sitting right there. I'll just go and I can usually sample or find a sample of that color somewhere without having to remix the whole thing. I'm putting a little bit more detail in the shoulder, increasing some of the contrast in the details. I don't use a lot of white in the painting. I tend to find straight white or out of the tube white too chalky. So I tone the white down quite a bit. The highlight on the background figure, you can see as there's my blending brush there. The highlight on the background figure is pretty bright, but it's still wet, so I can blend those areas back and soften that contrast. Putting in a little more detail, a little more shadow in the focal point. Yeah, most of my paintings have very little white. The lightest color comes off as white because it's the lightest color on the painting, but it doesn't have to be white to read as white. Blending in some reflected color there. There you go, softening off again with the big soft brush. And then I take that soft brush and I can blend colors from other areas of the painting into different areas and create kind of a color harmony so colors don't get too isolated. I think there'll be more of that later. And there's some reflected color. The light on this painting is top left, which is a little odd for me. I tend to like the light top right, but in this case it's top left, and so the this case is top right, so the bottom left will be where the reflected light is coming from, and it tends to be the dominant color that's in the background of the subject that makes up the reflected light. So there's a lot of blue reflected light in this painting. Adding some details, maybe toning down some of that red again so that it's not quite as intense. Blending off here again some of the detail and then reestablishing it later. It's a play back and forth of what I want to hold and what I want to get rid of. So we're getting pretty close, I guess. We're again softening off with that big brush. You can see here I'm using the same brush which has quite a bit of red on it, and then I'm going to come in. It's that alizarin crimson, and I'll use that big soft brush in some of the shadow areas of the white figure on the right hand side to blend some of that warm color in. There's my maul stick, which usually comes out towards the end of the painting. Not always, but occasionally it's nice to have something to steady your hand on, especially if the detail's in the middle of the painting, and then you need something to steady your hand. There it is. There's that red soft brush being blended into some of the shadows of the folds on the fabric. And that's what Dad would always say. That's coming along. So we've got a few more finishing touches, but basically that's the video. Thanks for watching.